Hi everybody, my name is Marije Vogelzang, I'm from the Netherlands, and I design shit. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my work. I was educated to be a product designer, and I went to the Design Academy in the Netherlands. And when I was there as a student, I started to do many projects and trying to find many different materials to work with, because I couldn't really find a way to express myself in best. So I went to the wood workshop and made some tables, and I went to the ceramics workshops and I made some ceramic pieces, I did some plastics, some textiles. And every day after my classes, when I would go home, I just, well, erase my earring. Yeah, that's better. Then when I would go home, I would go to my kitchen to cook my dinner. And when I was in my kitchen, I looked at all my kitchen tools, and I thought, well, this is a kind of workshop too. And then I opened my cupboards and I saw all my stock, and then I thought, well, that's a material too. And this was 12 years ago, and at that time to think about food as a serious subject for design was really something that wasn't really there yet. And it's funny because designers, they make everything for human beings. They make clothes, houses, cars, bicycles. Everything is directed to the human being. But the very thing that we need to live, that we need even more than sex, is food. And I just couldn't imagine why food wasn't really regarded as such an important material. So I started to work with food as a designer. And if you're a designer working with food, it kind of makes sense to say you're a food designer. But it would also imply that you would actually design food. And I think food is already perfectly designed by nature. I don't really feel that I should play God and make it even better. So I looked at my work and I thought, well, I think it's much more interesting once you start to work with the material of food. First of all, you start to shape it into a nice shape. But I think that's not really interesting, actually. I think it's much more interesting to look at food from the verb of eating, which could mean harvesting food, cooking food, sharing food together, the psychological effect on yourself when you eat something, the sociological effect of farming on our world, all these different kinds of things. I think is much more interesting. And then to shape the food is just a tool to tell the story that you want to tell. So I started to say, I'm an eating designer. I'm just going to show you a little bit of the things that I've done. It's not a chronological story, but this is the first thing I did with food when I was still a student. And this was in 1999, and the teachers had this assignment for us. They told us to do something with the color white. And in many cultures, the symbolic meaning of the color of white is the color of death. Well, in most of Europe and also in Holland, we have the color of black as a funeral color. And when I looked into different cultures in the world, you can see that in many places, food and eating is a very important part of a funeral or a burial. And it kind of makes sense, because food can comfort you. It's something that it might suit you in your grief. And, but in Holland, quite typical, we don't really have any rituals when it comes to funerals. So we dress black, we go there, we look very sad, and then we have a cup of coffee and a slice of sponge cake, and that's it, and then we go home. And for all these poor Dutch people that don't have rituals, I made this white funeral dinner. So all the ingredients are naturally white. And I'm not a chef, I don't cook professionally. So I didn't really know if these flavors would combine well together, but I just went and got all this white food I could find, and I prepared them very purely, very simply. And I found that actually they combine very well together. All these flavors are very subtle, like rice and poultry and bread and cauliflower, but then there are also some very strong and sharp flavors in between, like daikon root, goat's cheese, garlic, these kind of flavors, which I think are very suitable for a grievance like that. So this is just the same project in a couple of different ways of presenting. And so once I started with food, I didn't really realize the potency of it, but I just started with it because it just suited me well. And I also think when you're a student and you have to decide a material to work with, all these materials have their certain qualities. But this material, you can actually put inside your body, absorb, and become a part of your body. And I think that's really fascinating. And it's the only material, really, that you can taste. So after this funeral dinner, I did many different things. And every time people kept asking me to do a Christmas dinner. And I always thought, well, you know, Christmas dinners, they're so full of cliches. I don't know if I really want to do another Christmas dinner. You know, you have to do things with stuffed turkeys and Christmas crackers and Christmas puddings and decorations. What can a designer add to that? And then Droog Design, they asked me to do a Christmas dinner. And I thought, what is really, for me, the essence of Christmas? And besides the story of Jesus Christ, I think Christmas is about being together, sharing food together, and feeling connected to each other. So I made a very simple intervention. And this is a table, and normally a tablecloth hangs down to the ground, but I took the tablecloth up into the air, made some slits in it, and created a new space. And this is in Amsterdam. This is a dinner with 40 people that didn't know each other once they started. And the nicest thing is if you go to the bathroom and then you only see the backs of people. And the reason for doing this, it has a couple of reasons. First of all, if you sit into a different space with your head than with the rest of your body, it feels very strange, and you feel like you're all in this awkward situation, so you feel connected in this kind of psychological sense. But also physically you're connected to each other, because if I pull here, you can feel it there. And the last reason is a kind of communist idea that if you don't see your identity through your clothes, then everybody becomes more equal and is more connected to each other. So that's the situation of this space. And I need to say that this one is another one I did in Tokyo, also with 40 people that didn't know each other. And I was really scared to do this one because people were acting very formal. When they entered the space, they were bowing and handing over their business cards, and I thought, well, I don't think anybody will want to sit in my idea. And I noticed that when they entered, they were kind of scared to participate in this dinner. But once they actually put their heads into the tablecloth, it was as if their masks were falling off and they were becoming very playful. Even maybe like children, they were becoming very free and interactive. And it was really interesting to see this change of behavior going on. So it's not only the setting that is created, and this is a good example of why I say I'm not a food designer, because you can see that this lady only has 2 pieces of melon. But what you can also see is that these pieces of melon are put on a plate, which is cut in 2. And everybody on her side of the table has melon. Everybody opposite of her, on the opposite side of the table, has ham. Well, ham and melon is a classical combination. So people, you don't have to tell them what to do. They will just start to share their food and interact with each other. the main course was quite simple. The first person got a huge, large piece of rib. The next person would get a whole pumpkin, stuffed with seeds and nuts from the oven, very tasty. The third person would get a whole lettuce. The lettuce would be cleaned, but it would still be a whole, dressed with croutons and dressing and everything on top. And the last person would get the potatoes. Well, people are social animals. They just like to behave in a way that they communicate with each other. So they started to cup things up and make a big mess and share everything together and have a lot of fun together. And especially in Japan, it's very strange to have a big piece of meat on your plate, which for some reason, which I didn't think of, only was given, the big piece of meat, to men. And I don't know, that just happened. And these men felt, they really turned red and started to thank me personally for giving them meat, which was for me not really thought of at front. So I think the psychological effect of eating and the behavior of people is very interesting. And the next project I show you is a very small project I did a while ago in Rotterdam. The Historical Museum had an exhibition about the Second World War, and especially the time after the World War, when there was a hunger winter. And many people died of starvation because simply there wasn't enough food. And what I did for this exhibition, I went to the Resistance Museum and I asked them to get me some original handwritten war recipes from women from that time. And what I did is I just made these recipes. I didn't change anything of them. I just made them into kind of small bites, and I presented them on a cardboard sheet as a kind of ration. And when people entered, they got a little coupon, like the coupon that you got in the war. And with this coupon, you could get some surrogate coffee and your little ration of food. The name of the dish in front of here is Hendrik, which is just a regular Dutch name, the hunger killer, and it's made from grated beetroot and a little bit of flour that you fry like that. And what happened there is that many people that were attending this exhibition, well, some of them, they were children during the time of war. And these children, they had been eating this kind of food when they were small, and now they were old, 65 years later. And for all this time, they hadn't been tasting this kind of food into their mouth. So by eating this food again, some of them had relived memories of the time that they were children in the war. And these memories, they were very sad, but also very beautiful, because they were a part of these people's lives, and they were forgotten about these memories. So by having this food entering their bodies, it didn't only go to their belly, it also went to their brain to evoke really strong and vivid memories of that time. And for me, I didn't actually, I didn't intend that to happen when I did this project, because I didn't realize that that could happen. But by seeing this happen, I thought, how amazing is this? That you can actually use a material as a designer that enters one's body, but also becomes a very emotional tool for people to relive memories. And all of us, we know that food and smell are very strong tools to have a relived memory. But for me, this was a very worthwhile project, and really a reason for me to work with food. So I like to go to supermarkets to go and look around and be surprised sometimes by what I see. And I don't know if you can find those things here a lot in the supermarket, but in Holland we have a growing section of vegetarian alternatives. Do you have those here? Like things that are made from soy, or that are made from protein structures. Yeah, you know those? Well, we have this growing range of items that are made from protein structures. You can make them in any shape. Mostly they're made from soy. And we have them in many shapes, and you eat them because you don't want to eat meat. But for some reason, they have the shape of meat, and they also have the name of meat. So they call them balls, sausage, burger, schnitzel, fillet, and they all have these kind of references to meat, which puzzles me because it is not meat. So it's not an animal, so you don't know if you're eating that burger. What kind of burger is it? What kind of sausage is it? I'm really puzzled by this idea. And then I thought, well, apparently people like the idea that they are not eating meat, but it has a reference to animals. But if you can make any shape from any shapeless soy, then why don't you just invent new animals? Because these products don't have a soul. So what I did is I made 4 animals, and this one is called the herbast. And the herbast lives in France, where it runs through the herbal fields, and because it needs to be camouflaged for predators, it has a fur which grows with herbs. And because it has this herbal fur, it's great if you have the stir-fried chops that you can see on the top, because they're already pre-seasoned, so you don't have to season them. And also this animal is square-shaped, which is fantastic for transport, for packaging, and also on the table you don't have to fight who gets the best piece. This is another animal, and it's called the ponti. And it is found, and I think you can, if you look closely, even find it here on the island, because it lives in empty volcanoes, where it feeds itself on the ashes of the volcano, and therefore the flavor of the meat is tender and lightly smoked. And because it has this firm tail, you can easily pick it up by the tail and use it as a party snack. This is a vegetarian fish, and this fish lives in the shallow waters near Japan, where it feeds itself on the seaweed that grows there. And because it has eats a lot of seaweed, it has a lot of antioxidants in the meat that the real connoisseur can see, because it has the green stripes in the meat, and also it's very aesthetic, and you can use it for sushi and sashimi and these kinds of uses. Here you can see how it lays in the supermarket in the packaging. And the last meat is a vegetarian bird, and it's a dessert meat. So it's sweet, and it lives in Canada in the maple trees, where it feeds itself on the sap of the trees. So it has a very nice, lightly sweet flavor, and it combines very well with ice cream and chocolate, and can be eaten for dessert. So here you can see the making of. What I just showed to you are prototypes. We made them with marzipan, because in Holland we have this tradition during the month of December to make marzipan animals. But really any industrial food corporation could really make these things. And right now I'm working with a technician to see if we can make a pop-up restaurant where we can sell these for a couple of months. So just some small things. Marshmallow clouds. One of the ingredients is real rainwater, which we have plenty of in the Netherlands. And these are marshmallow icebergs. They melt in your hot chocolate for inner global warming. These are sugar spoons. You can stir them and then they melt into your tea, which gives you no dishes to do. And this is a lollipop that shows what sugar does to your body. Well, this cute little girl is my daughter, quite a while ago, and her name is Juni. And Juni is lovely. But when she was that age, she didn't want to eat her vegetables. And of course, for me, as a eating designer mother, I couldn't have that, because that's really bad marketing. So I needed to come up with a plan, and I read this article that children need to eat and taste something 7 times before they can accept the flavor. It's just like learning a new language. You just have to repeat and repeat and repeat. And besides that, I noticed that when you put children in the setting of a dinner table, many children already start to resist because they know, okay, now the fight will be beginning, I will resist and close my mouth. So it's a kind of battle between the parent and the child. And so this whole setting of a table is having a kind of negative connotation in the child's brain. And so I came up with a plan. And I invited my daughter, together with all the children from the daycare, for a workshop. And I told them that we were going to make vegetable jewelry, or bling bling, for the boys. And so I had this table full of vegetables, and I told them that the only tools that they could use were their teeth, because children's teeth are very sharp. So they started chewing away to make lovely sculptures. And some children, they were chewing and creating rings and then eating their rings without thinking, and thought, oh, where is my ring? And because they were not in the setting of eating, and they weren't eating, really, because we were just playing. They were actually adjusting to the flavor, and I can proudly state that my daughter now eats her vegetables. And, well, of course, this wasn't done by teeth, but it's a nice advice. If you have small children and a little drill, then you can just drill holes into carrots, and then you have these witches' fingers. It's a very cheap way to entertain on a dark, gloomy Sunday. Elf ears. Okay, so that was that, and I just want to finalize my projects, and then afterwards I will tell you a little bit of theoretics about my work, with actually one of the most recent things I did, which is a project I did in Budapest in Hungary, and there I did a project with gypsies, and you have to know that in Budapest, or well in Hungary and also in the countries around, gypsies are regarded as the lowest of the lowest of the lowest, and then underneath there for a social class. And it's very sad to see that these people are being accused of every theft that you can find, and that they are really puked out by society there. So it's a really big problem in integration of social groups. And these gypsies have been living there for decades, but still it's really a battle going on. And so I'm going to show you a project that I did. Yeah, and just watch and you'll see.
This is a performance around a group of Roma gypsy women. I think if you want to think about understanding between different social groups, I think food is a very, very strong tool that you can use to create a bond between people. To create understanding for gypsy people, I think to use food is one thing, but then to be fed by someone is another thing. And I think that's why also it's only women, because it's mothers that feed their children. It's this kind of essence of life. I think the idea of feeding is a very intimate. A mother feeds her child with food, but also with love at the same time. I thought about making this installation where people are getting physically fed with food, but also with stories.
Az almával az a kedves emlékem, hogy összegyűltünk így gyerekek. És engem a nagy gyerekek nagyon-nagyon szerettek valamiért, mert azért egy hárka voltam. és vittek magukkal, és kerestek egy nagy házat, ahol nagyon sok a almafa. És beloktunk, és hát leszettük az almát, és majd jött a parasztember, és így nagyon kellett rohanni, nagyon-nagyon futottunk, szóval életem első olyan futás és utolsó, és amikor futottam, és utánam kiabálta, vagy utánunk kiabált, hogy te büdös cigány, és kiderült, hogy csak én voltam cigány.
The installation is made in a way that you can't see each other. You're sitting under the table, you have this little tent, inside there are pictures and text and a flashlight, and it's a kind of strange environment. And then you sit there and the lady tells you her memories and the memories of the food that she has, and she will include you in her life in that way.
Karácsony volt, és bejött egy ilyen, nem tudom, ilyen tenyeres talpas nőre emlékszem valójában. És volt egy lány, akivel folyamatosan együtt mentünk házról házra, mi az intézetről intézetre, vagy nem tudom, hogy mondjam neked. Ő szőke volt. És akkor bejött, azt kérem, meg azt kérem. És akkor így valamiért kellett mennünk vele, kimentünk ő hozzá, és egész nap takarítani kellett, vagy jöttek a vendégek, és betettek minket egy ilyen hideg szobába, de nagyon éhesek voltunk. Vissza is vittek minket este, és annyira gyönyörű volt, annyira szép, csodálatos szép, mert csak mindenkinek lehet ilyen karácsonyon, hogy így kinyílt a díszterem ajtaja, és megláttam a magas fát, csodálatosan feldíszítve, és sok-sok gyerek ott eszik, és kiabál, és beszélget, és jól érzi magát. És a slusszpoén az, hogy csak akkor ehettem narancsot. Karácsonykor ehettem csak narancsot, és kaptunk mindenféle tárgyakat, ilyen hülyeségeket, és én elcseréltem narancsra. Elkezdtem így, hogy neked adom ezt, te add nekem a narancsot, és rengeteg narancs volt.
If you have had that experience and someone shared her food with you and her story with you, you cannot hate that person. You have to like that person. It's Immanuel Kant that said that if you break bread with each other, you can't break each other's neck.
Adok egy olyan dalt, amire gyerekkoromban mindig elaltatott egy nevelőnél. Jó? Csukd be a szemed. Légy szíves! Szél viszi messzi a fellegeket, s mögötte lángol az ég. Nyújtsd ide, édes, a kis kezedet, ki tudja, látlak-e még? Ki tudja, ölele a két karom, ki tudja, csokol-e a szád galambom, ki tudja, mely nap és mely hajnalán indul az utam tovább. Örültem, hogy itt voltál. Azt szeretném, ha nyugodtan itt ülni, majd jön egy kísérő, aki elkísér.
Nagyon köszönöm. Nagyon jó volt, mert tényleg olyan volt, mint egy kuckó, tehát így azonnal egy ilyen nagyon személyes térbe kerültem, ami teljesen azonnal magával ragadott ezekkel a fényképekkel, mert pont szembe velem egy szoptatós kép volt, meg nagyon jó mondatok voltak, meg látszott, hogy gyerekrajz, szóval azonnal egy életet éreztem. Olyan volt valóban, mint hogyha a saját anyukám lenne, vagy én, mint mikor anyuka voltam, vagy most is az vagyok, mikor odalépett hozzám az Ágnes, gondolom ő volt az, ilyen nagyon kedves volt, és etetett, és nagyon szép volt.
So, for me this was a very meaningful project, and the thing is that the people that were sitting underneath the tables in these tents, they didn't see who it was that fed them, and I wanted to do that because otherwise they would go out and think, well, you know, I hate all gypsies, but this woman, she's nice. And I wanted to make people think, I don't know who it was, and the next time that they would see a gypsy, they might think, you know, everybody has a story behind them. Maybe it could be her that it was. And also these balloons that you saw, they were filled with a scent. The lady was telling her story, and she was feeding a certain kind of food that she had a relationship to, or that she had memories of, and that she was including in her story. And the balloon had the same scent as the food that she was giving. So you could take the balloon home and then still have the scent to evoke the memories later on during the day. So I have been doing this now for 12 years, and I feel like I'm still beginning, because there's so much you could do if you think of it with food and design, and I'm really happy to be one of the first people to start working on this matter. So what I did is I looked at my projects, and I made these kind of 8 different points that could inspire anybody to start working with food, because I think there's so much still to do. So I hope that more people will start to do it, and you can already see that it happens more and more. But if you look at a philosophy, I think it's much more interesting to look at the questions than at the answers. So I just made a bunch of questions to hope tickle other people to work with this. So of course, when you start to think of working with food, and everybody knows that, especially chefs, you work with your senses, and it's really interesting to, besides just smell and taste, think about all your other senses. For example, color or sound. One question that I have is, why don't we like blue tomatoes? Or one of the few blue food items is Smurf ice cream, which I always ask my daughter, don't you mind all these dead Smurfs that they had to kill to make your ice cream? But she doesn't really mind. Why do we eat more when food makes a crispy sound? Did you know that? There has been done lots of tests to see how it works, but apparently when we eat crisps, it starts to crisp in our head, and it's a kind of addictive, so people start to eat more when food is very crispy. Why does the smell of coffee make you sick when you get chemotherapy? I do also some projects with hospital food, and the nurses there, they actually know quite a lot about the effect of food on people, and the doctors seem to not want to know anything about the effect of food on people, which is another matter in itself. But apparently when someone has chemotherapy and wants to have coffee again, then they know this person is getting better. The second point is dietary science, because I wonder, you have so many chefs in the world, people preparing food, and I wonder if these people really realize that everything you eat and put into your body will have an effect on how you feel. And it would be interesting if every restaurant was more aware of this. One thing that I wonder, I don't know if you know what in vitro meat is. Have you heard of that? In vitro meat is that you can actually grow meat in a laboratory, in a petri dish. They are working on this. This is not far in the future kind of things. It's something that's actually happening right now. Sausage factories have spent lots of money to get this done. Because on the one hand, you can say, wow, it's fantastic. You can actually make meat from stem cells, from animals, so you don't have to kill animals anymore to feed people with meat. On the other hand, you could say, whoa, I don't want to eat meat that comes from a laboratory. And so I don't really know personally where I stand, but you can also question yourself, well, if you can make this, would it have a soul? Why didn't anybody have food allergies 50 years ago? It's really an emerging illness that you can see that is actually really bad. Some people die from just having one peanut. But 50 years ago, nobody had food allergies. And where does it come from? Does it come from the industrialization of our food? Does it come from chemicals that we use? Or is it just a kind of genetic thing that we carry within us and that we are transporting to next generations? is obesity and illness. Mostly the most alarming questions and the most alarming issues, I think, are most inspiring. And I think, you know, as you're a designer or a creative person, you can make lovely things that look very nice and are nice to see. But I think it's much more interesting to see if you can use your creativity to actually solve problems or give answers or give alternatives or address the most alarming issues. The other one is culture. Well, we are all humans. We live in this huge world where in every corner there are humans, and all these humans need to eat. That's a basic fact, otherwise we will die. But all of us, we eat in very many different ways. We have different ways of preparing. We have different foods that we eat. We have different etiquettes. We have different food histories. We have different climates. So it's a very rich point of inspiration, because there are so many. If you just look around the globe, there's so many to find that can inspire you for new ideas. But also, if you don't look around the globe, but just look into your own culture, you can see that food history has a lot of things that start to become forgotten, that you can actually dig up and make contemporary. Who knows to prepare a pig's head? Does anybody know? Because then this person should teach me, because I would like to know, but I don't. And this is something actually I'm a bit mad at, because my mom, she comes from a family where her parents would actually go hunting and get wild boars and rabbits and stuff, and they would actually prepare them and eat them. But my mom's from the baby boom generation, and so she felt like that she could spend her money to buy a plastic wrapped piece of meat that has no bones or reference to any animal, and she's very happy to eat that. And so she didn't pass on any of the knowledge that she actually had from her parents to me. And my dad's even worse. If he eats a fish that has an eye, he starts to scream. So it's this thing of generation that can just, in one generation, it can just be skipped. And then I just have to ask other people if they can tell me how to prepare a pig's head, for example. Can we use food to create understanding between different social groups? Can we create new rituals? Do we need new rituals? The world is changing, we are changing, our food habits are changing. So this could be one subject to explore in itself. Of course, as a designer, you can also just think about food as a material, and you can apply a technique to approach this material with. Well, if you think about all the materials that you can find in the world, all the ingredients, and all the techniques that exist, then only that is already a lifetime of work to apply those to each other. Is there any use in putting a potato into a 3D milling machine? I have no idea, but you can try it. Is using organic fuel made from edible materials a sustainable solution? It's a discussion that we can have. If vegetarian alternatives are made from shapeless soy protein, why don't we invent new kinds of meat or new animals? Well, the thing I showed you, you know, it's just one option, but I'm sure other people could come up with other options, and I don't know which one would be best. It's just trying to find new ideas. It's interesting to see that, especially because I was speaking at this food service forum in Hamburg 2 weeks ago, and that was a huge crowd, almost 2,000 people working in the food service industry, mainly in big food chains. And it seemed as if these people, and they're working with food every day, have forgotten that food always comes from nature, that it always is derived from what the world has been giving us. And it seems as if this has been forgotten, and I think a big role of designers is to start to educate people again, and to make the link back from food to nature again. Why do children think milk comes from the factory and the forest smells like shampoo? It's this funny story. I was at Procter & Gamble, and I told him about this little boy that went to the forest, the pinewood forest, and then he would say, "Oh, mommy, the forest smells like shampoo." And then the people from Procter & Gamble, they said, "Yeah, that's what we did." can you blame people who grew up in wartime to want to have strawberries in winter? One thing that you see is a very strong part of young people are going back to a more sustainable view on food. So they are going to farmers markets and they are getting organic food, and I think that's fantastic. I'm a member of Slow Food Movement, but also I think you should also consider a framework where people are in, because you know, if people have survived winter, who can blame them that for them it's a fantastic thing to have strawberries in winter, for example? And so I also think you should always consider the framework you are thinking in and working in. Do you know when the cauliflower season starts in your region? Psychology, you saw that already in the examples that I showed to you. Yeah, I'm referring to shit a lot, actually. And the title of my work is I'm designing shit, because eventually everything I make is ephemeral. All my food, all the things that I design are being eaten and taken to the toilet, which I think is a fantastic idea. And I'm really happy with that everything I make will not last. So because I'm making things you consume, in a way I'm not adding to consumer society. As a designer, there are so many things in the world. Why do we eat when we're not hungry? That's something I think everybody recognizes. Sometimes you eat because you're in a social situation. Someone says, hey, let's have a coffee. And then you get coffee, even though you don't even feel like having coffee. Or you get seduced every day by so many adverts of lovely looking things, and you think, yeah, I want to have that. Or you feel that you earn it because you feel a little bit sad and you want to comfort yourself with food. Or maybe it's just a habit. Maybe every day at 4 o'clock you eat something, even if you don't even feel like eating. So you also have to realize that food is really very strongly related to your brain. The largest part of a baby brain is actively working on the matter of food and eating, because it's just the most important thing in our lives. Why do we reward our children with sweets and are surprised that we want comfort food when we feel sad? So I comfort my daughter with broccoli. No, I don't. Why do I dislike the idea of eating insects while I do like to eat shrimp? And this is just a cultural thing, because if I would have grown up in China or in Southeast Asia, I probably loved eating insects, but for some reason I really find it difficult to eat an insect while I have no problem just taking the head of a shrimp. And they're actually family to each other. Well, the last point I want to share with you is society, and I think everybody that works with food, or maybe everybody that eats, should consider the effect of what we eat on our planet. Do you know how far your lunch has traveled? Why do chicken get more antibiotics than needing children in third world countries? And this is actually a fact. How many fish are left in the sea? Why are bees dying? You know, it's a kind of sad ending of my presentation, but I do think it's an important ending. And I always think that if you take a starting point for a design that is kind of sad and alarming, the most beautiful things can happen from that. So my book is called Eat Love, because I think love and eating are very much intertwined with each other. And of course, you all need to go and buy this and support me. Please. So this last slide was I supposed to show, but it's not there, Edda. Oh yeah. And then should I say it? That there is lunch now. And go and have lunch. Enjoy.